Okay, we're going to try another design. You might be getting sick of these lighthouses, but I'm having a great time with it, and I forgot that I had this other lighthouse stamp in the Nature Set number 4. And Nature Set number 4, it's kind of a mishmash. I did this design for Stampscapes a long time ago, and there were some stamps that I didn't release in certain sizes, and some that I don't know, I didn't do some accompanying designs for them, so I just kind of released Nature Sheets number 1 through 4, a little bit different than some of the other sets in the line. Number 1 through 3 are collections of stamps that I had released at a Stamp in the Hand company, and they had discontinued them a long time ago, so I released them in sets for Stampscapes. And this is one of those designs right here that I just didn't do a lot of accompanying designs for when this came out, so I didn't release it, and I just kind of held on to it for a while. And then I don't know, some people had asked me about it. Some people were aware of, I don't know how people kind of find out about certain stamps. I don't know if I had a code for it, and they were just kind of curious as to what that code was for, because they had, they were collecting a bunch of images, and here they're missing a code, so maybe that was it. But anyways, I wanted to do let's see if I can do a kind of a quick scene here, employing some of the techniques that I've been doing on the previous Lighthouse scenes here, and this should go fairly quickly, I would think. And I don't know, I just wanted to do it for this one. I haven't used this one in a long time, and I don't know, I just wanted to use it in this set here. So let me see, I'm trying to decide whether I want to do this. I don't know, card format, or I don't know, I guess they're both cards, but which way do I want to do it? I'm planning on doing this. Now this is called the Solar Eclipse right here, but if I'm stamping it out in white, I thought it would be really interesting, because it'll be, instead of a solar eclipse, dark, it'll be light, so that could potentially be my moon. And I thought about doing something kind of in the theme of the two lights, okay? And one would be the lighthouse light, and one would be the moonlight shining down over this scene. And let's see, this is a folded card, pre-folded card, and when folded is a 5x7, okay? And it's dark blue, and it's matte cardstock. But let's see here. Let's stamp it out. I'm going to stamp out my image in black ink. And I'm going with a Versafine. Versafine's very, very, very black. Versafine's really great for high detailed imagery. It doesn't clog up in the imagery, and is some people's favorite black. I tend to not use it too much on glossy paper because it is kind of thick, and I kind of want to be careful about not smearing ink when I applied a lot of different colors when I'm using glossy cardstock in that technique. Oh my gosh, I have some dark blue glossy cardstock that I need to play around with a little bit, in terms of some of these techniques. I think it might be kind of interesting, but I don't know. This is just I wouldn't say it's an endless type of kind of a grouping of ideas that just keep flowing with every scene that I do in this these reverse out and kind of dark paper techniques, but I don't know. There's a lot of things that I'm kind of curious about whenever I do some of this. Okay, there's our lighthouse right here. Okay, it doesn't show up too well because it is a dark on dark background, but that's how kind of all of these, you know, different scenes are kind of starting off. They look a little bit obscure because, you know, I'm stamping it on such a dark background, so there's just a very little contrast between the image and the background. And plus, this image right here, okay, has been purposely rendered very light, and I have these little striations of tone in here because it's supposed to look like it is in mist, okay, like in fog. I've even put some lines across those trees so they're not so dark, okay, because the idea is that this lighthouse and this whole area right here is really set pretty far in the distance, and I wanted to make kind of a atmospheric, foggy looking scene for it, okay. Now let me see here, I can add some other tones here. Let me go get my other wave stamp. I think I can have something that would go really well with this imagery in the form of some little ripply waves down there. Okay, we have the Rocks and Waves stamp. I was thinking about just this one right here, the Wave Small. Oh, Wave Small stamp. Okay, but we also have this larger one. I was thinking about just doing the small one down here, but I think maybe I can do two, both in conjunction with one another. Perhaps, I'm not sure. Maybe we'll do some of this one, the Wave Small, because I want to do some of those kind of foggy, misty looks, and maybe I won't go too deep space in this one in terms of having something really close to you, you know, in addition to distant. Okay, I'm going to do this in the black ink, and I'll add it. Okay. Like so. I'm kind of going across the crease there. Actually, that stamped pretty well across that crease. I'm surprised. Okay. Now I can just go for a little bit of it too, like that. Oops. See, if I just kind of angle this, then I'm just getting the top side without getting the bottom side, so I can fit some additional texture right in here. Boy, this wave stamp really looks awesome on this glossy cardstock here. I mean, matte cardstock. Matte and dark cardstock. It even lets me go with multiple impressions, so. Okay. So I have all those impressions in here. Makes for a nice texture. See, it's a filler stamp, much in the way that the water pattern stamp is when you're doing any scene with water in it, or the sedge filler stamp when anytime you're doing something with grass. All right, so you can just kind of carry that all out to the edge, and when you're doing this one, you don't want to think of it like bricks where you're stamping it exactly, you know, side by side, edge to edge, and, you know, top to bottom, okay? You don't want to do it so symmetrically. You kind of want to, you know, oscillate it here and there, use certain portions of it. That way it looks a little bit more random as opposed to the same image stamped multiple times, okay? And you don't want it to be obvious, you know, as far as that goes. Okay, here's my moon. You have the light kind of coming across this way. I can do that thing with the horizon line as well. In fact, I think I will. If you've watched any of the previous 3 videos using the Lighthouse imagery, what I've done is let me see if I can do something here. Okay. I'm going to create a horizon line. I'll figure the horizon line, we'll make it a bit lower down here on the horizon than the last couple videos. I think I'll put it about right here. Okay, so I'm going to fold this piece of paper over. I'll go for about a third. Okay. I'm going to fold this piece of paper. This is what I should have done on the other ones. I should have just had a template. Okay, this is my folded mask right here. Okay, and that'll give me my horizon line. I'm just going to take this, and this is nice and straight here. I'll just put that right in there, and that's going to be my mask for creating a horizon line right here, and I'll do it in black ink. And I'm going to use the Marvy ink. Marvy ink will possibly go on a little bit lighter than the Versafine. I'm not really quite sure, but I think. Lightly streaking this, okay? Just very lightly, okay? It's light in terms of the touch. Okay, that way I'm not, doing any wear and tear on the sponge, because there just simply isn't enough pressure to, do it any damage. In order to see some of that line, I have to kind of go over it multiple times. Okay, I'm not getting impatient and squeezing into it, and getting like these types of marks right here. Okay, like that. Okay, it's more of just like a light stroke, okay, like that. Okay, and that gives us our nice horizon line. Okay. I was just thinking it might be kind of interesting to do that across the top here too. Let's give it a try. I try to do, something a little bit different, or add something to each kind of composition that I'm doing, especially if it's a certain technique that I'm kind of trying to discover for myself, in terms of some kind of compositional element. Okay. What I'm doing, in theory, it's just kind of giving it a little bit of a foundational base down here, and kind of visual weight at the bottom. I don't, the previous ones I haven't done this too much. I guess there were some rocks or something down here, and I put a little bit of tone down here, and there is texture down here, but I don't know. Let's just see what this looks like. It can't hurt, I don't think. Okay, so there it is on the base, and let's do it on the top as well. Maybe it'll kind of cap off the top of the composition. Okay, looks pretty good. Go a little bit more in the corners. Now this is meant to be a card, so it's going to fold across like that. So it's going to be like that scene, and then a full page spread. But let's just start off like that. Maybe I'll tone in a little bit of extra tone around the lighthouse image. Kind of anchor it down a little bit. I can have some of it in shade. Okay. This will be fun to embellish with whatever I end up embellishing it with. In terms of textures and light and shade. Okay, so we have that. Let me see, the light can go this way. Yeah, I guess it can be that concentric circle one too, which would be interesting. It would be a big, bold statement. Okay, let me see here. Let's do something with the moon, I think, at this point in time. The eclipse, but hopefully it reads as like a eerie looking moon. Or do I do that after? I'm thinking that could be potentially wet. But let's just do it. Okay, so let's give it a shot. Let's see what this reverse out image looks like on dark paper. It'll look kind of weird at first, I think, because it's going to be an isolated tapping or impression of white amongst a field of darkness, you know, in terms of the entire card. This will be the first time I've ever stamped this image out in a, you know, white, or I guess in anything but a dark color. Okay. Now this image, like so many of the sky figures, has tone around it. Okay, that was so that when if you stamp out this solar eclipse, you see that little flary type of thing around that sphere or circle. We have this tone around it, but it is a rectangle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blot off some of that with a paper towel. Okay, I'm going to dry some of this around the perimeter so that instead of it being too rectangular in shape, hopefully it stamps out a little bit lighter. Okay. Or I guess in this case it's actually going to stamp out darker. I want it to kind of fade out a little bit on the perimeter. Okay, let's see, where should I put this? Should I put this a little bit over? Center? If I put it center, it would be more of a kind of a direct, very structured composition. But if I put it over here, I think I'm going to make this one kind of a pyramidal, very balanced composition. Maybe I'll put a sailboat down here or something of that sort. Okay. And I don't know, I was thinking about just making it kind of a real balanced structure here, because this one, it's offset, you know, it's kind of more rule of thirds type of thing. So this one can just, I don't know, it can be somewhat of a complement to it, or, I don't know, balance it off in terms of structure, or I don't know if it's balancing it, I guess it's kind of contrasting it in some ways. Okay, that looks about what I was hoping it would look like. And we don't have that harsh perimeter, kind of a rectangle in there. If we did get it, we're going to be adding some other cloud effects around it, so I don't know that that would really play a factor, but we'll just kind of get it started in terms of the blending out of the kind of tone and imagery. Okay, so I have this sailboat that I'm thinking about stamping out down here. Now, I want to add in some kind of cloud effects in right here, and I also want to do that, the light part of it coming out of there. So let's get that lighthouse started with a little bit of illumination. Okay. And in this lighthouse, you can see that little window on the side of the lighthouse and the lamp itself. Okay. So I am going to bring out the light of those two. I really get a kick out of that, doing that now. It's like the funnest part of the scene. I don't know, not really, but it's just fun to kind of, you know, add some light into kind of interior illuminated structures. Okay, let's see here. Where's my vellum? I think I lost that piece of vellum that I had. I want to position that light. All right, I can't find it. Okay, here's my way of measuring then. Okay, here is the, if I came straight across, not that this beam could go any way you want it to, but I'll just go right here. And let me give a little tiny mark here. That's the center of the beam right there. If I just go straight from there to there, I think that's straight. And then, how about I'll make the beam, actually this is a better way to measure it anyway than that vellum. Okay, I'll have the beam going about like so. Okay, so I have the beam kind of set, you know, right from right here to here, and from right there to there. Okay, we need 2 pieces of paper for this. Let me get this positioned in a little bit more of a comfortable toning way. We have a long strip of tone to add here. Let's go about like so. Okay, and there's our beam of light coming from the lighthouse. Okay. All right, Colorbox pigment ink and a sponging tool of your choice. You can use a Colorbox stylus tool. You can use cosmetic sponges. Anything you want to add this in. I guess if you didn't have anything but you had a paper towel, you might be able to kind of wad up a paper towel or a napkin and get this sponged in. I'll probably build up a little bit more around the light itself, where the light would be, in theory, the strongest, right? The source of light. And then as it moves out, I'm probably going to tap on a little bit less ink, okay? Or I'll try to. Sometimes it's, I don't know, it's a little tricky playing around with this ink. It's fairly thick. Be careful if you're using something like there's some faster drying pigment inks, which I think would be a little bit more precarious because you do a tapping, and if you tap it too hard and you don't kind of blend it out very fast, it could leave you with a lot of the shapes of the applicator, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but if you want to go for kind of a smooth transition, or as smooth as you can, you want a kind of a slower drying ink. Now I am getting a little bit of texturing, but I try to smooth it out as best I can, and I don't know if there is kind of a like a harsh edge or something like that in there of, you know, this tip, sponge tip. I don't know, it doesn't really bother me from a visual standpoint, or maybe I just kind of figure, you know, I'm going to get that, so it doesn't bother me one bit. Okay, so that's all you need to do there. There's our dramatic light coming out of that, and see, that little variation out there isn't too bad. If you have a little bit of clouds or something like that, maybe it would look kind of interesting. Okay, so I really enjoy adding, I guess there's a lot of aspects to this kind of process that I really enjoy the look of. But let's go in and add in some kind of torn paper towel, kind of cloudy effects in here, and that really makes for some nice textures when you're doing this type of process. Now we have this moon up here, and I think the moon would make for some nice effects in terms of your, I'm looking for a nice torn paper towel here. Some nice, it's a great excuse for some additional cloud structures, okay? So you kind of, I like to go for a little bit of a jagged look like that, you know, for your torn paper towel technique. And if you don't know what I'm talking about with the torn paper towel technique, you're about to. I'm placing this down like so, and I'll have it going kind of, I like the idea of like an eerie moon where you have some clouds in front of it. So I'll have some of that moon showing right there, like that, okay? So let's go in and add a little tone to it, okay? Or in front of it. Just lightly dabbing. It doesn't look like, a lot of times, no, my pad is a little bit dry in terms of the amount of ink on my, this is Frost White Colorbox, by the way, if I didn't mention that. But see, I mean, you know, it's coming around already. I mean, you can barely see it on here. Sometimes it doesn't look like you're applying very much, but let me just put a few little dabs on this side. Okay? See, we have that already. You know, that one. Maybe around the moon I'll add a little bit more because my source of light is there. Then I'll move out this way, and possibly the cloud is a little bit less defined. I don't know. There's a lot of tolerance here, I guess you can say, or call it, when you're doing this type of effect. You can kind of do anything, and you know, it comes out, you know, pretty interesting looking. And purposeful. Okay. So there's one cloud. And see, what I do is I have kind of this rip here is kind of has these downward kind of shapes in there, and I see that happening around this moon with the clouds above it. We'll have this kind of downward illumination to it, okay? And let's go for another paper towel here. I'll kind of layer it, okay? So we'll go for multiple layers. I can come out to about right here if I want to. If you don't like your rip, you can just kind of work it a little bit. So it's almost like a paper towel sculpting or something. You know, go for a, you know, kind of an edge that you like. I like it what I'm looking for is I'm looking for it kind of varied in terms of the ripping. Okay. And let's go up here. It's always kind of strange when you're covering up what you've already done because you can't see it like this, but like I said, there's a lot of tolerance here. This one's going to be a little bit farther away from the moon, so maybe I won't add too much of it. I mean, but you know, you can just kind of play it by ear, take a look and see what's happening. You can vary it too. You can put a little bit more ink in some areas and kind of less in others. None in some, you know. It can kind of oscillate between a little bit light and dark too. See, that's coming around like that. Let's go a little bit with a deeper dip right here, okay? A dip in the cloud, okay, right here. See that? I think we can use a kind of a stronger illumination there. I might get a little bit more irregular too, I think. Put a little bit of a brighter amount there, which just means a little bit more ink. Okay, see it like that? Let's come over here and add some more out this way. Doing this kind of makes me want to add these types of clouds to more scenes that I've done in the past, on glossy paper too. I think it would look pretty good. I mean, I think I've done it before, but just not quite as much as you know, I think could have been done with effectiveness. You always want kind of all, whatever techniques you're using to be, you know, effective in whatever kind of graphic statement you want to make, but I don't know, kind of playing around with this technique on this dark cardstock where, you know, the effect is much more visible just because of the contrast that's achieved by doing something, doing white on something so dark. It's just, I don't know, I guess it's more obvious to me some of the, I don't know, the potential of this look here, this texture. Okay, and on some of these I like that varied look. I like a little bit more tone in some of these areas. Okay. So that where it's kind of a little bit lighter and a little bit darker, a little bit lighter, darker, the oscillation of it all. This entire process too, I mean, when you're doing like this type of thing, I find it to be, well, first of all, it's really fun. If it's not fun, I'm not going to do it. But I find it happens pretty quickly. I mean, these scenes really, I mean, some of the last, you know, cards I was doing took a little bit, you know, took a little bit of time, but it's because I didn't really know what I was going to do on them really at all. So, you know, until I did it. But this one right here, I figured, okay, I have that cloudy look, you know, and we have the light beam. Let's put the light into the windows, you know, so a little bit of a head start on this one. Okay, now see this one right here. I have the, I'm doing it kind of the opposite. I have some of these billows coming up here where this cloud is, this moon is illuminating these clouds down below, okay? So it's the opposite. On here, I'm doing kind of the highs, okay? Like that. Or wait, let me see. It's hard to think in reverse. Okay, here. I'm doing the dips like that, okay? And then fading it off up that way. Now when I'm doing it this way, okay, when I'm underneath the moon, I'm flipping this around and then, you know, fading it out. Light to dark. Okay, this is light to dark, bottom to top, okay? Now these clouds right here are light to dark, top to bottom, okay? I'm getting mixed up here. It's, you know, I haven't taught this at all, even in these videos before, so gotta figure out how to explain it. Plus, too, I don't know, I'm kind of like working the opposite of everything I've done in the past. Gotta put my kind of brain in order to kind of describe what I'm going after. Okay. I'm starting to soak through a little bit of that paper towel too. So I'm picking up the pattern of the paper towel, so I guess I need to switch paper towels. I guess paper towels are not expensive or anything, so I tend to use that same paper towel over and over again. Or, I don't know, all of my media. I guess suddenly the paper towel becomes like a, you know, a tool. Alright. I want to get a nice and interesting edge, a little bit varied. I don't want, in other words, I don't want it too straight, but I don't want it too angled either, I guess. I don't know what brand this paper towel is. I think it was, maybe it's Bounty or something like that. Some people ask that, or have asked it in workshops before. I guess the basic thing is it's 2-ply. Okay, let's put another. Now you can put clouds. You know, you don't have to avoid this light beam. Okay, the light beam is going across there, and let's add in some clouds in the background. Okay, you can do that. The light beam will just, hopefully it'll appear as though it's in front of this background cloud. Okay. It didn't show up too much, but I didn't apply too much ink either. I can keep applying a little bit more. Okay, something like that. See, now that it gives kind of dimension to that light beam. The light beam looks to me a little bit more dimensional, you know, because you can see things through it, so it's saying that that light beam is in front of that cloud in the background. We need something else right here too, so let's build up a little bit of tone in here. We'll put another cloud. We can put layers of clouds as well. Okay. How about right in here? I want to put a cloud kind of right underneath that moon, or in front of, I guess. Sometimes when people start doing scenic stamping, one of the things that I really like, comments that I like to hear is, sometimes it makes people kind of a more of like an active observer of things like light, moon, sky figures, nature, lighting on trees or something like that, It kind of makes them more of an active participant, and kind of the observation of, their surroundings. I'll hear people say, oh, I went to we went camping, or I was driving home, and, I noticed this moon, and it reminded me of a scene or something like that. Or they might have appreciated it before, but I think they sometimes they pay like closer attention, maybe, or it captures their eye, and it's evocative in terms of making them think about something, And I think when they start doing that, when they start approaching kind of the scenes that they're doing, I don't know, I feel it can create this kind of situation where they're tapping into their, I don't know, memories or whatever, their thoughts. Of seeing that type of imagery, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? It's not so buried in their subconscious, where they didn't really think of it, give it a second thought when they saw something like that. Now it's like they're thinking, oh, it's like, oh yeah, that moon or whatever I saw that day. Okay, so adding that across here, it's kind of, creating kind of a, fairly full sky, right? And now this is a pretty large scene as far as, the typical scenes that I do. So there's quite a bit, this area to fill in, but it goes pretty quickly. It's kind of fun too when you're adding this down like this, and it's like when you take off this mask and see what it looks like, it's really fun seeing what's kind of happening here. Because like I said, when you start applying it, sometimes it doesn't look like anything's happening on there, or it's like, oh, that's not very dark or light at all, and then you pull it up and you realize just how much, how much is showing on this dark paper. Okay, isn't that fun right in here? Look at that. It does look like, I feel it looks like, illumination now. It's a nice, deep, rich, you know, surface there as far as that goes. Okay, so we have that surface in there, but now it looks quite a bit different than the area down below, doesn't it? So here's what I like to do. I like to bring in some of those types of effects in this area. Maybe I won't have it so looping though, you know. Maybe I'll use kind of a flatter I don't know what you would call it, towel ripping, I guess. And let's build up a little bit of that kind of texturing down here. I've kind of drawn the image to be somewhat, you know, representative of a foggy setting, okay? So that right here, I'm kind of layering that in like that. See that? So I want to do more of that. Let's kind of reiterate what's going on in the image. I never thought I'd be like so concerned with the exact tearing of a towel. There. Maybe not. Here. Let me go like that. I don't want it so, you know, I just don't want it straight across, okay? Alright. Let's go like this, and I'll kind of layer it, but maybe I'll, you know, bring the layers a little bit closer to one another. Down below. I would tell you why, but I'm trying to think of that why. I guess because it's kind of distant, and I don't think I want such gigantic clouds. I mean, you know, I guess you could put that lighthouse in a bit of a cloud, but I don't want it to be kind of on the same scale as one of these clouds in the sky, okay? I want it low line, you know, like that, okay? See, that's starting to illuminate down there. So we're kind of putting it, we're giving that lighthouse a certain setting, you know, that it's in. And in this case, a lighthouse, you know, quite often, you know, it helps, it helped vessels kind of peer through nighttime fog and whatnot at times. In addition to just being in the dark, you know, there's a lot of fog, and kind of placing that element around the lighthouse puts it in its element for which it was founded or created. Okay. And I can do multi-layers too, just like I did in the sky. Okay. So that now that lighthouse isn't, I mean, it still looks a little bit flat, but you we've layered it in here so that whole area doesn't look so flat. Okay, now here's what I'm going to try to do. I think this is what this can use in the background. I'm going to try to create a background cloud, and some of it's in front of the mountain, and we'll put it, or a hill or whatever, and I'll put a cloud behind that hill as well. Okay. Okay, kind of like that. So it's kind of embedded in this texture. We have that kind of continuous cloud, or it ends right there where that hill begins. And in some instances, we'll put, that cloud, I think you can use another cloud over here just to kind of situate it in that, amidst that fog a little bit more. How's that? Okay. Trying to decide if I want a little bit more here and there. There's a lot of similarity around in here. Why don't we try to add a little bit more ink in some of these, on some of these clouds, just for a little bit of variation maybe. See, that one's a little bit brighter, and maybe around this moon, maybe this cloud right here could be a little bit, not brighter, but lighter. A little bit too. What I'm doing is I'm introducing a little bit more of a varied surface, so I'm kind of applying it not, I wouldn't call it haphazard, but a little bit less careful, just to create those little variation. Okay, where it's a little bit brighter and a little bit lighter. Okay, so there we go with that. Alright, there's my little crumbs. Sky crumbs. Alright, I think that looks good for that. Okay, now I'm looking at creating some other graphic elements in the form of maybe some text or some, another, I think the sailboat or something like that down here would look potentially interesting. The fishing boat would look good too. Some sort of boat. I don't think a canoeist, it would be kind of weird out here. But let me go see if I can find something to put in here. Or actually, I have them right here next to me. This is kind of interesting because I can kind of create this real formal type of structure. Well, this little fishing boat wouldn't look bad either. And I really liked that whale the last time. But I think in this case, I think a little sailboat might be nice. And I'm going to do this before I'm going to try to figure out what to stamp out in the scene this time before I add in any things like the white gel pen. That white gel pen really sticks on matte paper. It really doesn't give you much time to kind of play around with it, or if at all. So best to stamp out everything ahead of time. Stamping out the sailboat in the Versafine again. Okay. Trying to decide if I want to add any kind of foreground here, like maybe this is a landscape and this is like a cove or the coast, and you know we're coming around this way. I could, but I'm not sure yet. Some other design possibilities are in there, but I don't want to be too hasty, like I said. Let me see, a quote stamp might be interesting as well, so trying to decide where I put that, or it could just be a word stamp down below here. So there's all kinds of possibilities here. Still, in a composition that's fairly full at this point in time. We can add in trees, I don't know, these trees might be kind of interesting. The fir large. Let's do this. I want something fairly close to us as another potential dynamic element in terms of lighting, because I can put a little bit of lighting on the sides of some trees. Okay. Alright, now just for balance I'm going to put another tree over here, but not ink it up so that when I stamp this out, you know, that balances off that image. Versafine black. And I mean, this image right here matches what's on the Lighthouse stamp too, because the Lighthouse stamp has some pine trees on that hillside. I forgot what light this one was. I referenced some image, and I don't remember which one it was. Inevitably, when I reference something, I take bits and pieces from, I don't know, different photographs or whatever, and I compile them into what I think is kind of an ideal form for a rubber stamp. Most of the times I don't like to reference anything too particular, you know, like, you know, something that can't be used a little bit more universally. So I don't do things like, too often, like, I don't know, like Half Dome in Yosemite or something like that, you know. You know, I enjoy Half Dome. I love the imagery and the look of it and things like that, but, you know, I don't know if, you know, it's such a specific location. I'm not sure if someone, you know, overseas is going to want to, you know, have an image of a Half Dome as much as kind of their, I don't know, their local types of imagery. Okay, doing another one down here. kind of just allowing the ink to transfer over a little bit. I'm probably holding it down longer because I'm just used to stamping over glossy cardstock where, you know, the foreground is often the last thing and there's just so much ink on the paper. In this case, there really isn't too much ink. In fact, it's really quite minimal. Okay. So we have a couple foreground images. Okay. We got the cloud showing through it a little bit. But what we'll do is we'll illuminate those trees with the use of like some gel pen. Okay, now maybe I can create a little bit of a foreground here as well. I think that might be interesting. Well, let's do it. The reason being is this is a card, okay, so the card is naturally folded, so I mean, certainly this is one whole spread when you view it as like a two-page spread. But on the other hand, I do like it when both the front and back can read as kind of images independent from, you know, the spread whole. Okay. This one right here, let's go a little bit higher perhaps. Very nice. I think that looks really good in there. And I'll just stamp out a lower one down here. Okay. So now we have this shoreline that we've placed ourselves kind of as a viewer into the scene a little bit more. We're saying that there is land over here for us as a viewer to stand on, to look out at this scene. And I think that in terms of that scene right there and this scene right here, you know, it looks a little bit more complete, I think, independent from one another. Okay. So those trees are probably a little bit wet. Maybe I'll wait for this to dry, and then I'll start adding in some additional highlighting embellishments to go along with it. And then we'll see what else we can add into this scene that would be, you know, kind of an interesting element for it all. I'm thinking about some highlights in here and highlights on these waves down below, highlights on these trees, kind of reiterating the light falling down here. Stars in the sky would be really nice, a nice effect, you know, in terms of an overall texture to bring into it. You wouldn't be able to see so many stars in a cloudy night, but it's one of the beauties of stamping. You can make your scene really whatever way you want it to be. So anyway, I'll contemplate that for a little bit and get back to the scene later. Okay, I have given this scene a few hours to, I don't know, kind of settle. I guess there's a big difference between stamping on matte paper and glossy. I usually put on several layers of ink on the glossy cardstock, and sometimes, you know, you just never really know with the combination of inks and the amount of inks that are layered on top of one another, what it's going to look like when it's dried. I mean, I have a decent idea at this point in time, but a lot of times they dry a little bit more dull, but it seems like as soon as you lay down this type of ink on here, you know, with the Versafine and the Colorbox pigment ink, it pretty much looks like it's going to look you know, immediately. Okay, but more than just kind of setting up here, it's kind of given me time and a little bit of separation here to look at this scene and to kind of evaluate what I want to do with it. And this technique of, you know, doing kind of light on dark applications is still really new to me, so I'm still kind of experimenting as far as what can be done and what certain types of media look like on the surface. Okay, now what I'm getting at here is I thought I would try some of the bleed-proof white paint on a paintbrush, but I thought about going for kind of a more diluted version of it, where maybe it isn't quite so bleed-proof and opaque, but it's a little bit more translucent. Okay, there are some forms on the Lighthouse, and I don't know, various areas on the scene that I thought I might not want such a stark mark on it. Okay, so I'm getting kind of some of this ink off of here. I think not only do I want kind of a diluted version, but I want kind of a dry brush version so that it's even less opaque, it's even more translucent by doing this, hopefully. Okay, now I'm looking at like the Lighthouse here, and I thought about maybe illuminating just kind of one side of it a little bit, like it's capturing some of the moonlight. And let me see if I can kind of bring out the Lighthouse a little bit. Let me see if I can kind of zoom in here and show you what I'm doing. Okay. Need to lower my tripod a little bit. Okay. I've got a camera right in front of my face now. Right, well, not in front of my face, but right above my head. It's so dark right now. I'm kind of referencing the this here. I'm getting a fairly watery mark, which is kind of good because I just have a little bit of a highlighting on that lighthouse, so we can see kind of now it's being illuminated by that moon. Okay, and I think I can do the same thing on that little house. There's a little lighthouse house next to it, and it's kind of front lit, so let's see if we can't kind of introduce a little bit of lighting to that. Okay, I'm putting kind of a mark on the left side of the forms, and I'm doing this little hatching motion across that. Okay, now this is the way that I often work, as I've mentioned in other videos, but I'm kind of doing it in a very dry brush application, so there's a lot of control. So see that little lighthouse is kind of standing out now. Okay? But now, if you do that on the forms of the lighthouse, you might as well do it on some of the forms of the rocks, okay? You can see where some of those areas are illuminated, right? Now, just as if you want to, you can kind of darken up some of those darker areas. You can also illuminate some of the lighter areas. So all you have to do is look on the picture, or you can stamp out an image and see where the lighter areas are. And you can reference that. I mean, I can see it on here too. My brush is getting really dry now, so I'll probably need to go in and add some more paint to it. Yeah, I better add some more paint. I love getting my brush kind of at the right consistency. So when I have to re-ink, I have to kind of remove a lot of it again. Okay, I don't want that big blobby, amount on there. Okay, so you really have to take quite a bit off, and when it gets a little bit dry, when you think you can have a lot of control over it, okay, by adding very little at a time, that's the time to start applying it. Okay. Searching for the forms. Okay. We have those outlines there. And then it's a little bit light for me, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of wet this a little bit, or let me see. I'm going to use some water on it. Okay, I'm going to really dilute my brush. Okay, I'm just taking most of the paint out of it. It's almost like I'm rinsing it off, okay? And I'll just come back across it with a little bit of water and kind of blend out some of that paint. It will kind of remove the paint, okay, if there's too much. So that paint is kind of nice because it goes back into solution very well. Okay, and that looks okay. Just a little bit too light. Let me darken it up a little bit. Kind of just going over and blending it out some. Okay, that's about right. Okay. Where else can it be added? I can add it in the background, but maybe that's so distant I'll leave it in the kind of in the dark value that it is already. Okay, we have some areas of some kind of splashing waves down there. Let me see if I can kind of illuminate that area a touch. Okay. Kind of doing this little splashing little curls, like this type of mark. That's a fun little crashing wave right there. Okay, now let's take a look at the rest of the scene and look for some different opportunities in here for little embellishments. Okay, the moon is right here. Maybe we can put on some highlights on some of these trees. Kind of pulls them out from the background and makes them a little bit more dimensional, being that there's some highlights on it. Wherever you put a little highlight, you're seeing that there's a branch there, kind of not in shadow, so you're kind of oscillating the this idea of, you know, light and shadow across an otherwise, you know, flat impression. So I think it kind of brings objects to life by applying a little bit of highlighting onto them. Okay, see that? Okay, looks kind of weird though, because we don't have, you know, the same treatment hasn't been applied to other trees yet. Okay. Or other areas of the same tree. They call this kind of scumbling. It's just kind of adding a little bit of a kind of little squiggle, little smashed texture, I guess, to the object. And I'll just kind of in a subtle way, I guess, or I don't know, I guess it's not subtle, maybe it's more obvious, but I'm going to try to, just in general, apply a little bit more of the highlighting on the sides of the tree facing the moon, okay? We'll just figure that the moon is the thing that's casting the most light, unless that lighthouse was shining over this way, which it's really not right now. So on this side of the tree I put it on the right side, and most of the highlights on this tree will go on the left side, okay? Not 100%, but, you know, predominantly. I'll put a few little brighter highlights on the sides facing the light. Okay, so you can kind of vary your amount of lighting on them. Okay, I'm barely applying any paint at all at this point in time, but I figure it's kind of, applying like a very, very subtle um, application of paint, so it's very gray looking, like a dark gray over the dark black, but I figure I can build that up with a little bit of a few lighter tones, as I go. So you can kind of work dark to light in a way. Okay, fresh ink. Or paint. Sometimes it gets hard to kind of see what you're doing because the imagery is dark on dark, and everything's dark. But, so that being said, if you really need that reference as to what that object is, that's, it's okay, but kind of not being able to see exactly, where something is can also, give you freedom in order to put that highlight really wherever you want. Okay, so we have our trees kind of illuminated now. Okay, and I might put a little bit of highlights on kind of the tops of some of these clouds that are the lightest. It's just that little bit, You can't. Sometimes it kind of pulls the shape kind of out of the background a little bit. It gives it a little bit more dimension. I guess we can put a little bit over that solar eclipse too, or the moon. Give the moon maybe slightly more dimension. So a little tiny bit on the various crests. Put a few little craters on the moon or something. It's okay to put a little texture. Okay, now we have our waves down below. We see these little crests of them. Okay, I think it couldn't hurt to put a few little highlights on some of them. kind of a nice kind of pattern that we're starting to develop here. Okay. Now, I should really decide if I want to introduce a quote into this scene. And I think I might. I think there would be one that could fit maybe around here. I'm not sure. Let me see if I have a quote that's that could fit in here. And then we'll take a look at some other things that we can do as far as, I think, pattern goes next. Okay, I have a candidate here. It's, to the mind that is still, the whole universe surrenders. Okay, I know I have some other ones that say things like moonlight and clouds and things like that. And I mean, I can kind of, I can play around with text, you know, over this whole piece right here. I could put moonlight, you know, clouds, I don't know, sea breeze down here, things like that. I mean, you can play around with text over this whole thing, you know, if you want. But I think this quote might be interesting in here. I'm trying to think of where I'd want it, though. I'm thinking about right up here in the corner. It's going to be like that. But, I don't know. I think there's various options for it.